Hello. Am I in the world? I don't know if it started or not. Can you see me? Someone say something. Am I alive in here? Am I live? Am I live? Am I live? This is the big question. Yes. Oh, can see you. Awesome. What an exciting moment. Unfortunately, I cannot see myself on the page, but I guess that happens. Now, the next big question, can you hear me? Can folks hear me? Let's see if you think you can hear me. I'm alive. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? The audio. Good. Awesome. Awesome. Well, welcome. Thank you so much for being here. I am so super excited to be here. I'm more excited that you're here because I guess sort of I had to be here, right? I've spent a few months sort of putting on this project. So if I wasn't here, it kind of would have been a little weird. Everyone would have been like, whoa, she really doesn't believe what she's doing, that whole thing. In any case, I'm here and I'm so excited to be here. I'm super pumped to just tell you about what we're going to be doing. We're going to be having a really fun next 17 days, and it's going to be kind of intense, I'm not going to lie. There are some pretty amazing speakers, and some of them say some things that kind of push the envelope and kind of make you think, and certainly make you think about changing some of the things you're doing in your life. So let me just sort of start by giving you kind of a background to why I started this whole thing in the first place. And then we can start diving into what it really looks like logistically, what you can expect, and then of course, diving into all your questions, because we got a bunch of questions beforehand, and I think a lot of you will also be asking questions during the course of the chat. So I'm pumped to, and then of course did something just happen badly or no? Is everything okay? Still everything is okay? I didn't just pause the whole thing? Okay, perfect. So let me talk a little bit about why I got here. If you saw any information on the Work by Design Summit homepage, you know that no matter what I've been doing at many of the different stages in my career, whether as a social entrepreneur in Africa or as an earning employee at Twitter, or these days as an author of 7 books and an entrepreneur working from home, I've always really cared about one thing. And that one thing is really this idea of working well. And you know, there are many moments in my life where I look back and I think about when I started looking around and saying, hey, I don't think we're working as well as we can be. And you know, one of those moments, I remember being at Twitter in Silicon Valley and you know, being at one of those companies that is sort of held up as this paragon of innovation. And in many ways it was. But you know, I would just see some of the same patterns around me of lack of productivity and lack of efficiency and lack of communication, and just seeing how people weren't really working as well as they could be in the workspace, in the office, right? And one clear example that happened again and again is, you know, we were in this big open office floor plan, and lots of people these days love this idea of having an open office floor plan because it's so pretty looking, right? This huge space with cool desks, and you're right next to your friends and buddies and coworkers. And so it feels very communal. It's kind of, you know, you get to work in groups a lot, you get to collaborate a lot, but you know, there is kind of a downside, right? And that downside has everything to do with focus and productivity and doing deep work. So, you know, one thing that I would see again and again is I would have a coworker go off to a cafe and they'd come back a few hours later, and you know, they were just in that cafe for a few hours by themselves, and they'd come back and say, I did more in those 3 hours in the coffee shop than I get done in, you know, 8 hours in the whole day in the office here. And, you know, I would just kind of look at them and smile, and I would say, that's not surprising because that's really how it is. And so at some point in my career at Twitter, I started working remotely more. And that was when I really saw a big difference in my productivity, and when I could really decide my time, and when I had more ownership over when I worked and in what spaces I worked, then I was really able to sort of take my productivity to the next level. So essentially, all of this got me about 5 or 6 years ago to really start becoming obsessed with this idea of productivity. And up until that point, I'd sort of read books and dabbled in this idea of kind of hacking your life and hacking your work. But it was really about 5 or 6 years ago that I just started, digging deep and just interviewing anyone I could think of who knew how to work well, and reading any book I could think of, and trying weird hacks on myself, essentially weird hacks in my own life, some which I didn't want to ever share with an employer, of course, because sometimes folks don't always like to hear about you hacking your work life, right? There's an expectation, especially if you're an employee, that you should be your butt in that chair 10, 11 hours a day, whatever it may be. And I feel like this is a really sad thing in reality, because it creates a culture that isn't really encouraging us to be productive. It's just sort of encouraging us to pretend like we're working at times. And I think that's really a sad state of affairs. So my obsession with working and working well really started about 5 or 6 years ago. And over the last year, I was deeply entrenched in this topic because I wrote a book called Design Your Day: Be More Productive, Set Better Goals, and Live Life on Purpose. And the research I had to do throughout the course of that book was really essential in helping me learn kind of a lot of the science behind productivity and a lot of the thinking behind what works and what doesn't. Because obviously, there are lots of things we hear about when it comes to productivity. We hear, don't check your email in the morning. We hear things like that, but we don't really know what works and what doesn't. So when I finally published this book about 6 months ago, I knew that wasn't going to be the end of my journey with this topic, but I wasn't quite sure what was next. And so as soon as the book came out, I started hearing from everyone, everyone saying, this is so interesting, but I need more. How can I download your brain, Claire? What can I do to learn more about this? How can I sort of dive deeper? And so the Work by Design Summit was, for me, the natural next step. So this summit is something that, we've been working on, I've been working on for months. And essentially what it is this. It's a 17-day summit. It starts today. Right after this call, you'll get your first interview with John Acuff, which is going to be totally awesome. And it will run for about 17 days. Oh no, are you guys all there? Everybody all there? Everybody all there? Someone is hearing bracelets. Can you guys hear me? Oh, I have been disconnected. Oh, that's lovely. I've been disconnected due to 15 minutes of activity or something. Can you guys hear me? Am I still here? Oh, good. So I just stopped. So I hear people are hearing maracas in the background. What is that, I wonder? Wonder what that could be coming from. So can we talk a little bit more about the maracas, the bracelets we're hearing? I don't hear any bracelets. I don't know what that is. The bracelets, give me some more information. I don't know, Amber, do you hear any bracelets on your end? I really want to fix this for folks. It sounds all good for me though, but I don't know how to fix the problem. I don't know what to do. Is it like a ding, like a computer ding or something? Or okay, well we'll just keep plowing ahead. When I move your hand, I'm not wearing any bracelets. No. I think it's your mic. Oh, but this is my beautiful mic. This is my expensive mic that's so good for all my wonderful interviews. What a nightmare. Okay, let's see what we can do. What about hair against the headphone? Hair. But I always wear my hair like this. That's what's so weird about this whole thing. Okay, my hair, let's see. If I switch to that, is it any better at all? I just switch every time I move. It's not your mic every time I move. Someone's saying, there you go. Audio improved. I don't know what to say, guys. This sucks for you. I'm sorry. I'm using the setup I always use, so it's really crappy that this is happening. Okay, well let's go forward a little bit more and then sort of see what happens and cross our fingers and hopefully the bracelets don't come back. I really love bracelets. I'm just not wearing any right now. Necklace, no necklace, no necklace.
Okay, in any case, let's talk about the logistics of the summit. So the summit is starting today, right after this call. It starts with the first interview, which is with Jon Acuff. And Jon Acuff is, one of those awesome sauce people that sort of lives on the planet, and his whole purpose is just to teach you smart things. He's written a few books, but my favorite of his books was one of his first, and it was called Quitter. And it was all about basically how he quit his day job to find his dream job. And his books since then have sort of followed along in this vein. And he is just an awesome speaker and an awesome interview. And I think you're going to really get a lot of value from this interview. There's one particular story. I don't want to spoil it, but suffice it to say, there are, two stories that I heard in the course of these interviews that I've been thinking about daily since. And one was in his interview, and the other was in Emily Freeman's interview. So that's something to think of. Emily Freeman comes out tomorrow. So, oh, good. Folks are saying it's all better since you did whatever you did. Good. Well, I put a lot of thought into whatever I did, obviously. So the summit runs for 17 days. Today is day one. It ends on Thursday, June 2nd. And basically every day you're getting about 3 interviews. We've got about 45 plus speakers in the summit. We might be up to 50 by the end. The numbers are sort of, shifting as things go. And so each day there will be at least 3 things to watch, either interviews or a live session or a live webinar, because we're doing some of these things as well. So some of the speakers are coming back and doing sort of these encore webinars, or we can do Q&As with folks, or just to dig deeper into a particular topic. So that's kind of the format. And the way it works is you just go to the website, workbydesignsummit.com, you go to the agenda, you click on the person's name for the session you want to watch, who's live at that time, and then it takes you to the page, and then you just watch it. So, right now we're talking, it's 5 Eastern, Jon Acuff starting at 6 Eastern. So you just go find the agenda, find Jon Acuff, 6 Eastern, click, and then ta-da. And then you will have access to watch those videos. You can watch those videos for up to 48 hours after they're live. So today is Tuesday, 6 Eastern, you can watch Jon Acuff's until Thursday at 6 Eastern, essentially. And then for those of you who want to rewatch them or want access to all the videos and all the MP3s of the videos, as well as a bunch of bonuses, you can always upgrade to the All Access Pass, which is basically just a cool way to allow you to kind of learn from the material forever. I've attended a few summits now, and upgrading to the pass, really the real reason I do it, if I'm confessing here, which I am, is that I love online material, but I actually don't like sitting at my computer to absorb it. My favorite way to kind of absorb learning is when I'm walking, basically when I'm walking, I would say, or potentially doing exercise or chores or something. So the main reason I would say I really love upgrading with these all access pass type things is because I like getting the MP3s and then just loading them into my iPhone and then just kind of going at it and having all this content. It's like a fire hose of content. So that's one particular reason. People have different reasons. There are also some awesome bonuses and stuff like that in there, but that's something to think about. So, I think when I sort of think about the speakers and who we have over the next 17 days, I'm really just pumped because, when I look back about a few months ago, 4 or 5 months ago, when I was first sort of thinking of how I was going to structure the summit and what I was going to come up with, I sort of had these dream speakers in mind. And some of these folks are my friends, certainly, but I know that they're crazy busy. And I know that asking them to do one more thing is tough. And, as one of the things we'll talk about in this summit is, asking someone to do something is a hard thing, because if you want to really be productive and do your best work and increase your earnings, you need to be laser focused on what is your purpose, right? So when I ask someone to do something like this for me, it needs to be kind of a value for them or part of their purpose, right? So asking Don Miller or Jon Acuff to do one of these interviews, I'm not sure what they're going to say, because even though they're my friends, it might take them away from, their goal in this season of life. So I've been pretty amazed, if I look back and sort of think about that dream list of folks I had on the summit, kind of on who I wanted to interview over the summit, I've been pretty amazed that pretty much all of them came through. So I think you guys are going to be super impressed by the folks we have here. The summit is really broken down into 3 phases, and these 3 phases are really important. The 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 3 phases are really the phases are, they're just critical because, figuring out how to work well isn't just a whole bunch of material kind of dumped into a bucket and moved around. It's about going through a process. And the first step of that process, which is the first phase of the summit, is this idea of purpose. So it's about, figuring out what you're really meant to be doing. And that really does not mean necessarily just following your passion, which I think is one of the things that most surprised me about the interviews with the speakers in the purpose section. So, John Acuff starts tonight talking about purpose. Over the next few days, you'll hear from folks like Chris Guillebeau and Tish Oxenreider and Emily Freeman. And again, you'll hear from people that purpose is not just about deciding you have a passion for macrame and then figuring out how to build a business out of it. There are people who can do that and can do that well, but that's not necessarily what purpose is. And purpose, by the same token, is not just about saying you're going to be an entrepreneur and do something. I mean, you can have incredible purpose within any corporate position, and you can find a lot of purpose even in a job you don't totally love. So I think those are really key lessons that really came out of some of the interviews I did. I know for me, of the three phases, purpose, passion, and of the three phases, purpose, productivity, and profit, just to confess, the thing I've always had the most trouble with is purpose. There have been times in my life when I have not been working with purpose. I have just sort of been thinking about productivity and profit and just really focused on success and doing good work quickly. And so for me, the purpose section was really interesting. I'm not someone that generally teaches on the topic of purpose because I think it's something that I have struggled with, and maybe it's something at times that I still maybe struggle with a little bit. These days, I'd say for the last 5 or 6 years, I'm pretty on track with my purpose, but I don't really feel like I'm a teacher of that. So I feel like this section of the summit was really powerful for me as an interviewer, but really as a viewer. I went back and I rewatched these interviews that I did because I really, really learned a lot. So that's the first section, and for the next few days, we'll really be going through this idea of purpose with different interviewees. So then we move into stage 2, which is the second phase of the summit, and the second phase is all about productivity. And initially the idea for the Work by Design Summit was all about this idea of productivity with purpose. So what it means to be productive, because being productive isn't just about, not checking your email first thing in the morning. Being truly productive in your work is all about joining these three things together. So making sure that you have a real purpose for your work, then developing a macro strategy for being a productive person in your work life, and then ultimately moving on to the third phase, which we'll talk about in a bit, this idea of increasing your profits. So the productivity section was really fun for me because I got to really kind of geek out with a lot of friends and some new friends. So some total experts in the field of productivity. So folks like Craig Ballantyne and Chris Bailey and Laura Vanderkam and Ruth Soukup. And these folks had some really interesting things to say. Just to give you kind of some flavor and some ideas, so Chris Bailey is this, his interview is fascinating. So he's a 25-year-old Canadian who recently wrote a book about productivity after he spent sort of a year doing different productivity hacks, right? And he did some crazy stuff in that year. He would do different things for 1 week or 2 weeks at a time. So for example, 1 week he decided to test his productivity if he spent 80 hours meditating. So we talked about that in the interview, what he learned from spending 80 hours a week meditating, which was hysterical. He did another experiment in his productivity year, in his year of productivity, as he calls it, where he worked 90 hours a week. And he talks about, what that did for him. And just kind of as a preview, I think the title of his session is something like Why You Should Never Work 90-Hour Weeks, because essentially he learned that it was a complete disaster. So there's some really, really good sessions in the productivity phase. Another session I particularly love is Ruth Soukup. Ruth Soukup is a dear friend, and she's this super power blogger, 7-figure blogger with a few different kind of blogs out there. And she also runs Elite Blogging Academy. And she talks really powerfully about this idea that productivity is really about understanding, what a day is worth to you and what your value of your time is. And so we talked some about that, and that was really, really essential because, me working through this activity in my own life a few years ago was really important to helping me understand what being productive really was, essentially. So after we kind of go through the productivity phase, we end up with profit, which is the end of this. Because, the thing I say to people when I talk to them about productivity, or, when I wrote my book about productivity, is that the whole point of being more productive is to, earn more and play more, essentially. It's to give you more time in your life to do what you want and to earn you more income so that you can do those things as well. So the final phase of the summit is really talking to individuals who have done this very thing. So we talked to some, awesome folks like Dale Partridge, who built Sevenly and now runs Startup Camp. We talked to Pam Slim, one of my friends who just is so awesome. Her first big book was called Escape from Cubicle Nation, and it just sort of, sent ripples throughout the corporate world. Her latest book is called Body of Work, and she's just very passionate about understanding kind of that connection between essentially purpose and productivity and profit. Some of the awesome other folks we have in that section, we talked to Chandler Bolt, who runs Self-Publishing School. Let's see, who else do we talk to? We talked to, I can't even remember all the awesome people. We talked to Adam Grant, the Wharton professor and the New York Times bestselling author of Give and Take and Originals. He's an incredible mind in the space of working well and understanding what you were meant to do and how to really do it better and earn more at the same time. And then we finish it off with a keynote interview ending with my friend Don Miller. Don Miller, some of you might know from kind of books he wrote long time ago that have sold millions, things like Blue Like Jazz and Scary Close. But he's also the CEO and the head of Story Brand. And so we talk a lot about this concept of what it means to really bring profit into your personal brand or your business. And this interview, I think, is a really, really powerful one. And so I'm so glad it's kind of at the end, because it kind of ends things off with a bang, right? Can you say that? You say kick things off with a bang. Can you say end things off with a bang? So that's kind of the overview. And you can look at the agenda page on the Work by Design Summit on workbydesignsummit.com and see the agenda. You'll see that there are still some things that say surprise sessions, and those are basically surprise webinars, like I was mentioning. So some of those, I'm going to do a couple more kind of Q&As with folks as we start working through the interviews to kind of talk about what we've learned and to take some questions and to try to answer some questions. And then also we're going to be doing some extra webinars with some of the speakers, and then some extra ones with people who aren't already on the agenda. So basically some surprise guests. So that's kind of the macro, what it's all about. So let me see. I'm going to start, I think, taking questions now. We have a bunch of them, don't we, Amber? Let's see. This whole chat thing, it keeps disconnecting me, and then I keep being paranoid that the whole video is turned off. So yeah, so that's fun. Okay, I'm trying to find my questions. I put them in some important file somewhere. And let's see. Here are some of the questions where are some of the questions that are coming in, Amber? Oh my gosh. Okay, here are a few questions I have. Let's start with these, and then Amber, I know you've been collecting what some other folks have been sending in, so just keep sending me those ones on WhatsApp also, and I'll get to those as well as I start sort of going through these. Cool, so let's see. Well, the first and most important question, if you saw the announcement on Facebook saying that I was doing this live kickoff call, I said that I wanted questions about the summit, about the topics of purpose, productivity, and profit, and any questions about speakers. And finally, I said any and all questions about pink unicorns. And so the first and most important question is from Janka, with a J, Janka maybe. And she says, will I actually get a chance to ride a pink unicorn? Will there be a pot of marshmallows at the end of the rainbow? I think we probably need to start with this one. The thing is that I don't know much about unicorns. The only thing I really know about unicorns is I've heard that they're actually are they actually like the national animal or the mascot of something of the country of Scotland, which is kind of amazing. So that's my main unicorn bullet point. Okay, what's another question? Okay, let's see. Kim asks, Why is it so important now more than ever for people to be able to not only work from home, but to excel at it? I think this is a great question, Kim. And I would say the answer has everything to do with the numbers of people that are now working from home. So I think I was just reading an article last week that was saying we're now at like up to 50% of the population works remotely in some capacity. So maybe they're a corporate employee, but they're allowed to work remotely sometimes, or maybe they're an entrepreneur and they work from home. And so when you've got, 50% of, this is a study about the US, so when you got 50% of the US population, which probably, says something about the global population at large, doing that, it all of a sudden becomes really, really important that we actually know how to do it well. And there are a few different kind of issues that come into this idea of working from home. I shared at the beginning of this, kickoff call that I really, when I was a corporate employee and working at Twitter for 6 years, I really found that my productivity skyrocketed when I started working from home. But I think that there's a huge kind of stigma still against it. And for me, this probably comes from the fact that, some years ago, basically, if you worked at home, you were seen as kind of a slack off person, someone slacking off, or you were seen as maybe someone who just sort of wanted to like hang out and sit around in your pajamas and watch Oprah and wait for like the FedEx guy to come by or something like that, right? So I think that for those of us who know that working from home is an incredibly productive thing to do, we kind of feel like we're on this uphill battle against the naysayers. But suffice it to say, the main reason we all have to figure out how to do it better is because half of us are now doing it, right? And obviously our companies are going to fail and nothing is going to get done on the planet if we are just, sitting around in our pajamas watching Oprah instead of working on those days when we are at home. So that's something. Let's see. Here's another question. Seeing a question. I'm also interested to know more about many of the speakers. I know of a few and registered because I know I want to hear what they have to say, but I'd love to know more about the ones I've never heard of. Okay, so I think that's a great question. So I mentioned a few of them, but I think if we just go through the agenda, we can talk about a few more because there are some really awesome ones that I think maybe people aren't, names that people aren't necessarily aware of, but that can really kind of, that can really teach you a lot. So let's sort of go through the agenda. So for today, we've got John Acuff starting, then we've got Tish Oxenreider. Tish is a blogger. She writes a blog called The Art of Simple, and she's gonna be talking about how to live holistically within your life's purpose. This is something she's written about in a few different books and something she writes about pretty regularly on her blog, The Art of Simple. Theartofsimple.net is a really sort of large blog, particularly for women between, I'd say, 30 and 50 or whatever her key demographic is. And so a lot of women know about it. I think less men are aware of the site, but it's definitely for both genders and is just an incredibly powerful tool for learning how to really pare down to know what you want to do. And so that's really what we talk about also in that interview, which you'll see today at 7 p.m. Eastern. And then tonight ends up with Propaganda. He is awesome. He's this like rapper with awesome hair, and he's a friend of mine. And his interview is called Bootstrapping Purpose because it's all about bootstrapping. And there's this amazing Easter egg in his interview that I hope you watch just to hear this Easter egg, where he actually says that in the beginning, he was bootstrapping to the extent that he actually created like a fake assistant or something. So I guess this is when he was first starting to get more and more gigs, but he didn't really have, the money or the cash to give to a real assistant. And so he created like a fake assistant to help him with bookings, which I thought was like the most bootstrappy, funny thing I'd ever heard. So then tomorrow we've got 3 speakers, and the first one is Ali Fallon. If you haven't heard about her, you will want to know everything about her that you don't know after you listen to this talk tomorrow, because that session is called Why You Must Ask Yourself, What Would You Do If You Could Do Anything You Wanted? And Ali, she kind of got onto the map when she wrote this book called Packing Light, which was all about her doing this road trip across the whole United States and trying to figure out what was next for her and trying to reach her dreams of becoming a writer. And so we talk about what that meant for her and how, now she's seen some more success, but how she's still trying to sort of keep her eye on the ball with her purpose, and how for her, making sure that she asks herself that question, what would you do if you could do anything you wanted, is something that always has to stay sort of top of mind. Tomorrow we've also got Chris Gillibo, What It Feels Like to Find Your Purpose. Chris Gillibo, many of you know. He runs a World Domination Summit. He's an awesome guy. He's traveled to all 193 countries in the world. He has a few different books, and the recent one, which is awesome, is called Born for This. They're all big bestsellers. And he's really all about kind of this idea of figuring out your purpose in different ways. One of the ways he talks about is this idea of having a quest. So for him, you know, part of purpose isn't necessarily, or all of purpose isn't necessarily your work. It's also about what else you do. So one of the things he did was come up with this idea of a quest. And his quest was to visit all 193 countries in the world. And I forget how many years it took him, but it was just this thing he was laser focused on. And, you know, he just ticked off the countries one by one by one. And it was sort of in this process that he kind of, you know, came online and got this big blog, and people started learning about him. Emily Freeman is also on tomorrow. Emily Freeman, I mentioned, I think earlier in this Q&A, but she is just such a star. She has written a number of books, and if you don't, you know, follow her work, you really need to, because she's also just so well spoken. And so she's going to be talking about this idea of how to listen to your life. And I mean, not just like the phrase itself, how to listen to your life, gives me kind of chills and stuff. But it's one of my top 3 favorite interviews in the whole summit. So looking through the kind of agenda, I just want to pick out some more folks that you might not have heard of. So we've got in productivity, we have someone named Amy Lynn Andrews. If you don't know who she is, you really should know. She is a blogger, and she came out with this best-selling ebook maybe about 5 years ago called How to Tell Your Time. And it's basically a calendaring system that she kind of lives by. And the ebook became a bestseller because it's so powerful and it's so smart, and it just is a great way of thinking about time in a new way. And so in that interview, we really dig into what that means. That interview is on Friday the 21st, and that's something I would highly recommend watching out for. We have an interview with Mary Catherine Johnson on Sunday, May 22nd, and the title of this interview is just awesome. The title is, If I Can Be 8 Months Pregnant with 2 Broken Legs, You Can Start a Business. So true story, she was actually 8 months pregnant when she broke 2 legs. So our interview starts with that, which is like, just like, where do you go from there? And then we talk about what that meant in terms of her mindset, in terms of shifting that to start a business. Let's see, another interviewer I want to make sure that you listen to is Jessica Turner on Tuesday, May 24th. Jessica Turner has this great book called The Fringe Hours. And The Fringe Hours is all about this idea that we all have pockets of time in our lives that we don't use. And Jessica Turner really works a lot with moms. She has a blog called The Mom Creative, which is very popular. And so what she does with moms is, or, you know, what she writes about for moms, is this idea that you have pockets of time in which you can do the things that really fill you up. So the title of her interview is called How You Spend Your 5 to 9 Determines How You Spend Your 9 to 5. And this comes because at one point in her life, her husband actually said, you know, Jessica, you are more productive from 5 a.m. to 9 a.m. than most people are from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. So, I mean, I've always just sort of loved that tidbit about her, that he said that. And I feel like that's such a good, it's just a good sort of message about who Jessica is and what she preaches. So I really think you should be there for that interview. Another interview I would love for you to remember to check out is on Thursday, May 26th. This is when we get into the section on profit. We're going to do an interview with my good pal, Mary Shanuda. Mary Shanuda is called the Paleo Chef on the internet, like, you know, the Instagram and the Facebook and the world, basically. And Mary Shanuda is this fascinating girl. She's also like, she's really pretty. She's like half Egyptian and has like cool hair and stuff. So she started as a private chef. She's a paleo chef, a Whole Foods chef. She started as a private chef for like these crazy celebrities and sports stars, and then basically transitioned into building her own business. And a lot of her own business has to do with one of these basically products she's created, which is called Fat Fudge. It's this like incredible, super healthy fudge that like I eat every morning now, and it's like the tastiest thing on the planet. And we will slightly talk about fat fudge, but only for like a second, because, you know, in order to understand the power of fat fudge, you really just have to try it. It's so good. But Mary's going to talk about kind of her journey, because she's done a lot of amazing things, and yet she really found that, you know, being a private chef and working with all these famous people wasn't really kind of the whole of her. She wanted to do more. She wanted to really be an entrepreneur and serve more people at a greater level. And so we talk about what that means. Another interview I think you're gonna wanna make sure to be there for is my talk with Dale Partridge on Tuesday, May 31st. Dale Partridge is a pal, and he started Sevenly, which is this large organization. And these days he's really an entrepreneur. He has this awesome new house and like a ranch he built in Oregon, and it's really cool. And you should follow him on Instagram just to like see pictures of the place. But he talks about in this interview the importance of generosity and profit. He wrote a best-selling book called People Over Profit. And, you know, Dale's one of those guys who is very transparent about his profit. You know, he's an online entrepreneur. He writes monthly what his profits were from the month before based on his speaking and based on the program he runs called Startup Camp. But he is passionate about generosity, and he just believes that generosity is essential to everything. And I think when we think about profit, we forget about the importance of generosity there. So his interview was really, I think it was challenging for me, and I think it will be challenging to other people. And then, you know, finally, I want to make sure you hear from Brian Dixon on Wednesday, June 1st. He's going to talk very tactically about how to create your first online product. It's a great talk. It's, you know, something that comes out of his work and his podcast. It's super laser focused. It tells you what to do if you want to create an online product. Then that same day, we've got Jeff Goins on how listening to your life can pay you handsomely. And, you know, Jeff Goins, his story, if you're not aware of it, you know, he's a writer, and he's done really well with basically being a writer, and yet he never really thought he could make a career out of that. And so it's been interesting to see how he's been able to be so successful at something that he didn't think could be a real thing. And then, as I said, we're finishing it up with Donald Miller and the awesome ending session, which is entitled "The Real Way to Become Successful and Profitable?" ? Do this. So he's going to tell you all about what that one thing you need to be doing is. So let's see if there are any other questions. Amber, are we getting more questions in? Are you sending questions to me in WhatsApp so I can see all the questions? Do you guys hear my 2-year-old screaming in the background or not? She's like, we live in Argentina, so it's 1 hour east of Eastern time right now. So it's 6:39, and she's, you know, heading towards bedtime, and this is sort of like meltdown hour. So yeah, that's kind of the downside, you realize, of having a home office on the ground floor, right? Oh man. Okay. Let me see. Oh, I think I'm not getting any of, oh, this is lovely. I love the internet. Amber, I'm apparently not getting your like WhatsApps because my phone is like not connected, or this is ridiculous. Oh boy. Okay, let's go back to Chatwing and see what Chatwing's doing. Okay, let's see some questions. Oh, good question. I see a question. Amber, is the summit for beginner bloggers or what? I got this from Ruth Sukup. I'm an EBA, and this stuff seems to be kind of going over my head, and I'm not exactly seeing any actionable tasks or lessons to be learned. It just seems to be philosophical sharing from business people. I think that's from Linda. So Linda, you know, bloggers can definitely benefit from the summit. Absolutely. It's not targeted at bloggers. It's meant for people who are entrepreneurs or employees who really want to understand how to change their productivity, to change their profits. I know that in Elite Blogging Academy, you do learn a lot about sort of what it means to focus in on your most important work. And so I think that this summit will bring up many of those themes, and especially in the productivity phase of it, I think you're going to learn an immense amount about sort of some tactics and things you can try to really change your blogging life, essentially. Okay, let's see. Okay, so it looks like people are asking how to access the videos. Yeah, so here's how you access them. You just go to the agenda page at workbydesignsummit.com. You click on agenda, and then you look at whatever is showing for that day, and then you click on the person's name, and then it takes you to the page, and the video is right there. And so if you go and look at the agenda tomorrow, say, you can then rewatch anything for the 48 hours prior. So, well, tomorrow will only be day 2. Let's talk about, if you go to the agenda on Thursday and you can look at all the items on Thursday, you can watch those as soon as they go live. And then you can also go back and watch those things that happen on Wednesday and on Tuesday. So you're able to, watch the things that are happening right then, and then the things that happen in the 48 hours prior. Let's see, looking for some more questions. Can you talk about the actionability of the summit? So one of the things I really wanted to make sure happened with this summit was that it wasn't just sort of theoretical talk. I think that especially when it comes to kind of productivity, there's this idea that you can read a lot and study a lot and not really change anything. And obviously that's the same when it comes to profit and purpose, but I think we think of it sort of most clearly when it comes with productivity. So in this summit, I've just been really clear with all the interviewers that I really want them to be able to give folks watching and listening something actionable to do at the end of their interview that can really help them, that can really move the needle today. So that is, what I'm really hoping for. And I think, as I went back and watched these interviews, I really think you're going to see that. You're going to see tactical, actionable things that you can learn and that you can implement. Now, that doesn't mean that all of the interviews are like that. There are some of these interviews in here that are just meant to be basically inspirational, because I think we can all use inspiration at times, and we can all use conversation at times also. So every interview isn't the most actionable thing you've ever seen, but I'd say 80% of them are very actionable. And at the end of the day, you're going to be able to learn, to take things away, and to change the way you work, which is really, really the goal here. So, no one heard the 2-year-old. Well, I'm glad about that. She would probably prefer you heard her because she wants to be saved from whatever, nightmare she's involved in. Probably her nightmare has to do with like Peppa Pig not loading or something, right? Yeah, she was being allowed. Oh, in Italy it's midnight. Oh, that's late. Dun, 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 dun. Oh, I see. There are a few questions about how to maximize the Work by Design Summit guide. So we renamed the guide. It's called something else now, but you should all be getting it in your email, if not tonight, then tomorrow morning. Amber, you don't know if it's coming tonight or tomorrow morning, do you? No. We renamed it. It's called The Power of Working by Design. And basically it's a PDF guide that will really help kind of prepare the groundwork for the summit ahead. And if you're here, you've probably signed up for the Work by Design Summit. You've actually registered. Most of you are like that unless you saw this on social media and just click through right now. But so if you haven't registered, you want to go in, you want to register, and you want to make sure you're getting those emails. The first email says, welcome to the Work by Design Summit, blah, blah, blah. And either tonight or tomorrow morning, you'll be getting in that email just a link to download the 39-page ebook. And hopefully you're going to, love it or whatever. Love it or whatever. I'm looking through. Someone saying, unfortunately, I'm not in Italy. I agree, Rod. Unfortunately, I am not in Italy either. I see someone saying, no paranoia required. I love it. Perfect. Yeah. So let's see. Does anyone else have any other questions? What else can we chat about? I want to say that one of the things I thought would happen when I put together the summit that I was a little bit nervous about, honestly, was I was just worried that folks would kind of come to the summit and be all excited about everything they could do to kind of make change in their life, but then not really know what to do next. And so throughout the summit, we'll be kind of hinting at things you can do next, at things you can do next to make a sort of real lasting difference. And one of those things is the thing we're launching when the summit ends, which is called Work by Design School, which is this whole program essentially for teaching you how to, reduce your work hours, cut your work hours in half, and increase your profitability. And so I think that for those of you who are, concerned about actionability right now, this is what I would encourage you to do. I would encourage you to watch the summit, watch as many interviews as you can, either run to your computer and watch them when they're live in those 48 hours, or, upgrade and, pay the $97 so they're in your iTunes and you can just like wander around whenever and just sort of download, the information into your brain. Do all that and then see what you learn from these folks. And then I think you'll be able to make a good decision after the fact if Work by Design School is right for you. It may not be right for a lot of people because it really requires a lot of work. It requires, digging in and making change in your life. And sometimes people aren't really at that stage. Some people are kind of more at the stage where they just like to absorb a lot of information, but not really implement. So do first things first, watch the summit, watch as many of these interviews as you can. And then as the summit is coming to a close, we can start to tell you kind of more information about what Work by Design School is and if it's kind of the right fit for you. Oh, hey, Eric. I'm so glad Eric Fisher is here. Eric Fisher is one of our speakers, and he's in the chat right now. Eric is this awesome guy. He has a podcast called Beyond the To-Do List. And I remember maybe it was like 3 or 4 years ago where I was just scrolling through iTunes, and I think the podcast was really new at the time. And I saw this podcast and I just literally thought, oh my gosh, like this person has created a podcast just after drilling into my brain. And I think I basically wrote him a tweet basically saying something similar to that effect, like, did you just drill into my brain and then create a podcast with all the things you knew I wanted to listen to? And so, Eric and I kind of became buddies as a result, and he's had me on his podcast a couple times now. But his podcast is such a great resource if you want to hear sort of about how people are productive. Well, this time I really am hearing my 2-year-old. I don't know. Are other people hearing? Maybe not. So, Eric is an awesome, awesome speaker. I'm super glad that he's in the chat now. And I'm just super glad that he was able to kind of do an interview with me, because I think Eric has been in this interesting place where now for 4 years, he's been doing a podcast about to-do lists, or really more broadly about productivity. And so he's really learned a lot from others. And so like me, he kind of has been able to absorb from other people and then decide sort of what works for him, and then how to sort of connect people with what might work for them. So he's a great resource. Great to see him here. Yeah, Edgar's saying, heard your conversation with Chris Lacurdo. Very excited to continue my growth journey. Yeah, did you hear my conversation with Chris Lacurdo? I think so, although I bet Eric has also talked to Chris Lacurdo, but I'm not sure. But yeah, Chris's session is another awesome one. Chris is a great entrepreneur in Nashville who basically helps entrepreneurs be better at what they want to be doing. And so we talk a lot about the idea of knowing what your best work is and then how to do it well. And Chris Lacurdo in his interview has this great idea of how you need to figure out how to like replicate yourself, which I think is something that people don't do enough of. If you're an entrepreneur, you've maybe heard this idea. If you're an employee, you haven't heard it as much, but everyone should hear it and should really try to adopt it into their own life. It's this idea of basically figuring out how people can help you to do your best work so that you don't have to carry it all alone. And, a lot of times that has to do with delegating. So whether it's hiring someone or finding, space in the corporate budget to get some support, or if it's just, asking a teenage kid to help out with certain things, or, finding a kid in the neighborhood to help out with other things, or whatever it may be. But just this idea of how other people can help you and how that can really skyrocket your productivity and your ability to really earn, essentially, and earn better. So, it was my conversation with Chris. Great. So I'm just going to, as we're talking, I'm going to go in and I'm going to check on the, we had this funny thing right before I signed on, I was checking the numbers of signups, and we were like still under 10,000 registrations. And I was saying, oh man, it would be amazing if during this kickoff call, we could get to 10,000. So I'm checking right now to see if we did. But of course, my internet is like slow because all the bandwidth is being taken up by all of you. Ah, man, we're at 9,807. So that's really just, I mean, that's amazing. There's so many of you, but I'm so sad that we're 193 people away from being at 10,000 because I wanted that, 10,000 registration moment on this call. Numbers are usually meaningless, but it's kind of fun to make them seem like a big deal. Someone's saying, I'm super excited about this summit. I feel like this is the perfect timing for me. Definitely a drinking from a fire hose stage in my life. Can't wait to watch these interviews. Awesome, Faith. Thanks so much for saying that. I'm glad you're here to watch the interviews, and I'm glad I'm here also. Even though I did the interviews, I feel like I have so much to learn, and I can't wait to be rewatching some of these interviews. I think it'll be interesting to hear what people's favorite interviews are, because I have sort of some predictions, but I don't want to, taint your minds essentially. So I'm super excited to hear kind of after the fact what ended up being kind of those interviews that were most inspirational and most actionable and really kind of most entertaining at the same time, because I think it is those entertaining things that can kind of impact us the most, right? I mean, you don't learn from boring stuff essentially. So that's why I kind of like that a lot of these speakers, some of them say some kind of funny stuff, some provocative stuff, some stuff you're not supposed to necessarily say on live video situation stuff. So yeah, we got a good group. We got a good group. I think you're going to learn a lot from them. I think you're going to laugh a lot. And I think you're going to find some super actionable stuff you can do at the end. Let's see. Does the enrollment number include the presenters? Ooh, Steve, brainwave. Oh my gosh, right. Because I'm 193 off from having 10,000 registrants, I could totally add the number of speakers to that to get closer in my mind. That's a brilliant idea. And then I would just, go to sleep better at night or something. Oh, but don't worry, we're at 9,809 right now. I just refreshed. So now we're only 191 away. Do you really not hear my child? She's really screaming loudly now, I feel like, and this does not seem to be, like blocking out the situation. I mean, she's screeching now. Okay, guys, I think bath time is coming. So we're 7 minutes away from John Acuff's launch. So I think I'm going to sign off now. I'm going to say thank you so much for being here. I'm going to go give my beautiful 2-year-old daughter the fastest bath possible, and I'm going to race back to my computer to watch John's video with all of you. And once again, the way you're going to find it is you're going to go to workbydesignsummit.com. You're going to go to the agenda page, and then you click on his name. Actually, let's just put the link in the chat right now. Can we just do that? Because that would just be easier. Where's the link? Okay, so go to the agenda page, and then right at the time, you'll be able to click, and then, okay, that's the link, right? So 6 minutes, it's gonna go live. Thank you guys so much for being here. It is such an honor to have nearly 10,000 of you here for this summit. I'm so pumped. Thank you guys for, taking the time to come into this chat. It was such a, good way to kind of kick things off. And this won't be the last one. We're going to be doing ones throughout the summit. Oh, good. Kara heard a scream. Yeah, go love on her. 2-year-olds have really high-pitched voices. Thank you guys so much. And then if you have any questions at all, gracias, Edgar. Gracias. Edgar está diciendo mil gracias por todo. Thank you. And if you have any questions at all, just shoot me an email, claire@clairediazortiz.com, and me or someone on my side will get right back to you. So thank you again for being here. So excited. And yeah, cheers to a good 17 days. It is going to be an awesome 17 days, Wendy. Bye, guys. You rock. Oh, but see, now what's going to happen is, like, I had a good send off, and now I have no idea how to turn this thing off. Wait, really? Oh, like, bye, guys. You rock. How do I make this? Oh, but see, now what's going to happen is, like, I had a good send off, and now I have no idea how to turn this thing off. Okay, I'm going to try to close the browser. Wait, really? And then just hopefully it magically goes away. No, it's still here because I see stop broadcast. What an amazing button Google Plus has created so that I can just ignore it. Okay, I'm stopping the broadcast now. See you in the John Acuff interview. Can't wait. Thank you guys so much for being here. And yeah, here's the next 17 days.